this is dedicated to one of my most influential mentors and teachers. His name was Denigan Janvier Honfu from Benin, West Africa. I met him when I was teaching at the University of Georgia as one of our guests, and he took up some quality time with me for a few weeks. And uh, during my last lesson with him, I had my video camera on, and I was so excited about what I thought I was recording at the end of the lesson before he was supposed to have left on his flight back to Europe. The camera was blank. And the impression he made on me, the lifetime impression, was that he said, "No, you are going to get this video." We started the lesson all over again, made sure the camera was rolling, and he risked being late for his flight out of the country to do that. And that really, yeah, it's kindness is good. And I've been benefiting from that since, and I pass that off to everybody. A kind deed goes a long way, a real long way. So this is for Mr. Hoan Fu, one of his melodic creations, a version of that. I took one little idea from him and added a lot to it.
Dr. Arvin Scott, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. All right. Good morning, good morning. It's good to see you all sitting here in the sanctuary this morning, as well as welcoming all our folks out there in Zoom world. It's always good to see you. Whether you're with us for the first time or if you've been here since the doors opened so many years ago, always, we're glad you're here. And first, I wanted to say thank you. I want to say thank you to everyone who was able to be here last week for my licensing ceremony. Whether you're here online, in person, or sending positive vibes from wherever you were, I want you to know that your love and your support and your patience with me and with the Unity ordination process mean a lot. So again, thank you. And with that, we're going to get started. This week is the final installment on what I call 7 Habits of Spiritually Evolving People. And this is based in part on Michael Bernard Beckworth's book, Spiritual Liberation, Fulfilling Your Soul's Potential. And everybody here knows the drill when I do a talk series, right? We start by reviewing the previous week so we're all caught up before moving on. So what have we learned so far? We've learned that we all develop habits, those things we say and do over the course of our lives. Some of those are helpful and some of them not so much. And since each of us is an expression of God or spirit or universe, whatever you choose to call it, we have that divine seed within us. We have the ability to change our habits. And that inner change, what we call involution, begins with our third unity principle. That is, we create our life experiences through the power of our thinking, and that includes our habits. So now we're going to go on to the habits. Next slide, please, Sabine. Spiritually evolving people give thanks for what most people take for granted. We're talking about gratitude here. We give thanks in, but not necessarily for each circumstance in our lives. What did we say? We give thanks for the blessing and we give thanks for the lesson, even when that lesson is tough. Because if we can learn from the lessons that life is teaching us, the better able we are to move toward fulfilling our soul's potential. And remember, if you don't learn the lesson the first time around, chances are life is going to give us another chance to learn the lesson, right? And sometimes that next chance can be a little painful. So let's try to pay attention to what life is teaching us, okay? Next slide, please, Sabine. Spiritually evolving people give without agenda. We give without agenda. So contribute to the flow of life in any positive way you can, be that through finances, be that through sharing your time or your gifts or your prayers or your positive energy. Gratefully, we give, knowing that God, Spirit, the universe is unlimited. And that wants to share or express, God wants to share and express that unlimited abundance to us, through us, from us, and as us. And as important as giving is, it's just as important to be able to receive, to open ourselves up to receiving not only money and material things. I mean, those things are nice. We all like money, right? We all like good stuff. But I'm also talking about prayer and support and love, and even being grateful to receive it when people kind of call us on our stuff sometimes, as long as they do it appropriately, right? Again, it's about learning the lesson, and we gratefully receive those lessons. And we receive in order to give. Remember, life's a flow to, through, and from us. What did we say? Don't block the flow. And why do we not want to block the flow? Anybody remember? I am not doing a good job. Spiritual constipation. Nobody likes being constipated, right? So yeah, don't block the flow of life. Don't fall into spiritual constipation. You can tell the people who are spiritually constipated too, right? They got that look on their face. Life is, nothing is right with life, right? It's all bad. They're spiritually constipated. Nobody wants that, right? Next slide, please. Spiritually evolving people race to see who can forgive first. And I'll be honest here, this is where I kind of push back on Michael Bernard Beckwith. I'm not so sure I'm a fan of that whole race to forgive part. And I say that because, sometimes, folks, life is tough. And sometimes things that happen to us or things that we do take time to process, right? So sometimes, depending on the situation, it may be more of a walk to forgiveness. But there's always forward movement, right? We may have to crawl to forgiveness, but that's okay as long as we're moving toward forgiveness. At the same time, remember that in Unity, we teach that forgiveness is tied to spiritual healing. So the implication here, as it is in the Bible, is without forgiveness, there can be no true spiritual healing. So that's important to remember. Remember, too, that practicing healthy forgiveness does not mean denying what happened. It doesn't deny the offense. We don't just say, oh, it's okay, that's fine, don't worry about it. You don't do that all the time because, that's just spiritual bypassing. What we're saying here is we don't let those situations define us. We don't let those situations control our lives. Forgive, release, let it go as many times as you need to. Because many times in life, forgiveness is not a one and done, is it? And finally, all that stuff I'm saying about forgiveness, don't forget yourself. Let's not forget ourselves. Why do I say that? Because if you can't love and forgive yourself, we are unable to love and forgive others, right? You can't give what you don't have. Remember, too, if you can't race to forgive, the Tao Te Ching teaches us that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So take the first step, and then the next, and then the next, and eventually we get there. Next slide, please. Spiritually evolving people experience life as a celebration. And the rest of that is rather than a problem to be solved. What we're saying here, this doesn't mean that it's always good in God's neighborhood. More spiritual bypassing. No. Life does present us with challenges. The good news is we have an unlimited spiritual toolbox of practices that we can use to address those challenges. In Unity, we have things like the 12 powers. We use affirmations, denial, prayer, meditation, spiritual community. Some of us use therapy, support groups. Other people use medication sometimes. What I say is, if it works, and if it's medication and it's appropriately administered and used, absolutely do it. The challenge becomes when we forget our toolbox. Because when we forget our toolbox, what happens? We tend to treat every problem with the same tool. We use the one tool for every problem, and that tool is normally a hammer. And that is not always the best choice. The lesson here, remember who we are. What did I say last week? We are powerful, we are positive, we are strong, we're steady, we are spirit-filled, and we are spirit-expressing. And that is something to celebrate. And with that, we're all up to date. We're ready to move on to more habits. Next slide, please. Spiritually evolving people talk to themselves. You have no idea how happy I was when I read that. I felt seen. I felt understood, especially when I'm sitting in traffic between here and Canton. You have no idea how many conversations have taken place. But there's more to this. We just didn't have room on the slide. Spiritually evolving people talk to themselves and not to the world. Well, that changes things a bit, doesn't it? Now, this does not mean that we never talk to people outside of ourselves or seek wise counsel. Now, I'm going to say wise counsel. There's a big difference there, right? Wise counsel from, good people and people that we trust in our lives. I am incredibly grateful for my colleagues and their shared wisdom with me throughout this process and in years past. I talk to them often. Ask Robin. Talk to them often. Now, do I always take their advice? No. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but I always listen. I try to incorporate their advice with prayer and meditation and other tools from my spiritual toolbox to make the decision. But at the end of the day, the decision is mine. And at the end of the day, the decision is yours. Beckwith, in his book, while he does support affirmations and denials and similar practices, he states that talking to ourselves goes beyond that. He says it's more like talking to or connecting with our inner self, the capital S. Connecting with our divine selves inside. And we do that with confidence so we can skillfully handle whatever life throws our way. What we're talking about here, folks, is believing in ourselves, trusting in our own inner divine wisdom. Wise counsel is good, yes, and it feels great when people validate us. Yet if we depend solely on outer validation for us to feel good about ourselves or for us to believe in ourselves, if we always have to have that outer validation, if we can't make a decision without someone telling us what to do, what happens when we don't get the validation? What happens? Yeah, Mary's got it like that, right? Again, we forget who we are. And when we forget who we are, we move into that neighborhood I call victimhood. And victimhood is a slum, folks. And I'm pretty sure we've all visited victimhood at least a few times in our lives. It's okay. It's normal. It happens. Just don't set up camp. How many of you remember that sitcom, The Jeffersons from the 70s, right? Yeah, move on up and move on out. Don't stay in victimhood. The lesson, go ahead and talk to yourself. You just might be surprised how wise you really are. Next slide, please. Spiritually evolving people choose happiness over drama. Now, some of you right now, I bet, are thinking, well, duh. Who in the world, Danny, would choose drama? True, but think about this. Beckwith points out that because of the ego's sense of self-importance, the ego needs to protect itself, right? So we create potential conversations. We make up potential situations sometimes in our mind, and we get all this stuff going on in our head, and we start playing out conversations that have never happened about situations which have never happened. And we rehearse our end of it just in case. Have you ever done that? Yeah. See, and I think most of us have done that. And what happens is when we do that, we create inner drama. We create stress within ourselves. And we all know that energy flows out of us. You know, whatever is in, it's going to find a way to out. So when we are stressing ourselves out with all this drama, we are affecting the people around us. So what do we do when we catch ourselves in that space? If you can, stop. Take a moment. Breathe. Recognize when we are being triggered. Or as I like to say, recognize when we are being asked to board the drama train. And the better we get at recognizing our trigger, the better able we are to let the drama train pass us by. And the more often we allow the trauma train to pass us by, the happier and healthier we are, the happier and healthier the people around us are, and the more we can continue to focus on fulfilling our soul's potential. Don't board the drama train, even when you get to be the conductor, right? Next slide, please. Spiritually evolving people understand the value of downtime. Okay. Spiritually evolving people understand the value of downtime. So this is my day for true confession. Why? Because while I certainly understand the value of downtime, I do not always honor it. And if I stood up here and said I did, the Reverend Robin Volker, who has joined us today, who is laughing, she would roll her eyes, or she might just stand up and say, "Blasphemy!" And that would be rather awkward. So I'm going to do what I ask all of you to do all the time, and what is that? Own your stuff. So I'm owning my stuff here. I'm working on it. Not there yet, but I'm working on it. So why is downtime so hard for some of us? Some case it's performance driven, right? Other people want us to perform. There are things that they expect of us, and we feel overwhelmed and we feel that we have to keep busy. Sometimes it's ego driven. Well, if I don't do it, who will? So I've got to do it because, well, I'm the only one smart enough to do it. We are just so important, aren't we? Beckwith makes a really good point. He says that constant entertainment, and I would like to add constant activity, permits us to escape from ourselves. If we're always busy on doing stuff out here and there, we don't have to look inside. We don't have to address some of the more challenging areas of our lives. He also says, and this is very important, if we're constantly busy entertaining ourselves or constantly busy doing stuff, we prevent ourselves from receiving insights that could be the start of some more growth and evolution. It could spur our activity, or spur our creativity. And we miss out on that if we're so busy keeping ourselves busy all the time. He says, and I agree, authentic rest is powerful. The lesson? Take a break, folks. The world will continue to turn on its axis without us for a little bit each day. Meditate, pray, take a walk. Sometimes I sit on the back porch and have coffee and pet the cat in my lap and don't really think about much of anything. Sometimes I watch cheesy sci-fi movies just to turn off church brain. And sometimes what happens is during one of those cheesy movies, I receive one of those insights that Beckwith was talking about. And other times it's just brain dead activity that I like to do. And I don't think about church at all. Love y'all dearly, but when I'm doing that, I'm not thinking about y'all. All right? Take a break. So that's it. Here are your 7 Habits series summary. Gratitude, generosity, forgiveness, celebrate life, Practice healthy self-love. Choose happiness over drama. Authentic grace. Take a break. It's that simple. And it's that challenging. I'll say it again, and I'll probably close the service by saying this as well. Join the spiritual evolution. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And so it is.